I was only 31 years old. It hit me of, wow, this is really serious.
I suddenly realized that when it's that close to home, it changes everything.
I didn't quite know from that point forward what that meant for my future.
My story is a love story. It started almost 16 years ago when my husband and I were engaged to be married. When I was supposed to be so excited about getting married, I end up watching this man that I called my Mr. Wonderful, who's 6'7" and strong. I saw him turn into a child again as he mourned the loss of his grandmother and his mother in a matter of 90 days as a result of a stroke. Years later, I found myself in the ambulance with my grandmother after she had a stroke and a heart attack, and she lost her fight to heart disease. It turns out heart disease has been running in both sides of my family and my husband's family, and we've lost most of the matriarchs in our family to heart disease. Almost a month ago, when I was with my mother, I saw her freeze in the chair, exactly what happened to my grandmother, lose complete consciousness, and because of a class that I took just a few months ago, I knew what to do. I had to perform CPR on my mother, and I couldn't believe it because I realized that when it's personal, it changes everything. I couldn't save my grandmother, but I was on a mission to do everything I could to save my mother.
About 7 years ago, we decided to move to Texas for my husband's work. I met some ladies in my neighborhood who happened to be runners. We decided to train for the Houston Marathon together. One of my girlfriends, her name was Mary. She was an amazing athlete, and we did some runs together. And then one night I saw her, and I asked her if she was okay, and she said she was tired, her husband was out of town, and that she was just looking forward to him getting home the next day. I said goodbye to her, and later that night my phone kept buzzing, and I thought, well, I better check this. And it was another girlfriend of mine who lived next door to Mary and said, there's a lot of ambulances outside of Mary's house. And I thought, you know, I'm just gonna call her because maybe something happened with one of her kids. She didn't answer. I called her again, she didn't answer. Finally, I received a phone call from her phone, and it was another neighbor who said Mary had a sudden cardiac arrest. I quickly left work and drove to Mary's house to see what I could do to help, and Mary didn't make it that night. She didn't survive. We decided that we would train for the Houston Marathon and run that race for Mary. My husband kept saying, Kelly, go get your heart checked before you train and run that race. So I went in, I had a full cardiac workup. My cardiologist wanted to do an echocardiogram just to give me clearance to run my race. She gave me a phone call while I was at work and said, Kelly, I need you to stop what you're doing and listen to me. You cannot run that race. You need to have heart surgery. 2 weeks after that, I had open heart surgery. When my surgeon talked to me after my surgery, he said that my heart valve was one of the worst he's ever seen in somebody my age. I was 32 at the time, and that if I would have run that race, I wouldn't have crossed the finish line.
One day in July of 2009, I went out for a 60-mile bike ride with some friends, and that particular day I felt lightheaded, and then I felt like I had indigestion, all things that I explained away. Eventually I had neck and shoulder pain, which I attributed to maybe my form on the bike, and finally in the last 10 miles or so of the ride I had pressure in my chest, and lucky for me, my friend didn't take no for an answer when he insisted that we go to the hospital, and they took a look at my medical record and saw that I had a family history of heart disease and said, we're just gonna test your heart. The minute he said that, I knew that that's what was happening. They immediately went into emergency mode. It turns out I had a blood clot in my coronary artery and would not have survived the night had I not gone to the hospital.
I never want that situation to happen to any other family. I want them to be prepared. I want them to practice. I want them to know the signs. It's different in women than it is in men.
I knew I was at risk because of my family history, but I didn't realize that heart disease was the #1 killer of women. I also didn't know that all of the symptoms that I experienced that day were an indication that there was something wrong with my heart.
I had symptoms that I ignored, and looking back, I didn't know that I had them until after my heart surgery.
When I had my heart attack, it was difficult for the people in my life to really understand what was happening for me emotionally. And so it was a gift to find the American Heart Association where I could actually talk with people who knew what I was going through.
The more you talk to people, the more you learn, and the more we're all connected. There's a sisterhood that I've developed very recently through Grow Red for Women. We can change lives by telling everyone we know about the impacts that heart disease has and the research that we need to put an end to it.
Without the American Heart Association, less people would know the signs and symptoms of heart disease.
Funding and research is critical to heart disease, especially for women.
They're all connected. The more resources we have, the more research we can do. The more research we can do, the more lives we save. Together, we can be loud about the silent killer.
We can educate the public, our friends, and our families.
Together,
we
can move mountains.
we can move mountains.
can move mountains.